Thanks, Vicky. Every year in Australia, 3,000 people die by suicide. They take their own life. In fact, the statistics from the Australian Bureau for 2015 were 3,027 confirmed cases. And if we do the maths on that, that actually comes back to 8 Australians on average every day take their own life. Or if you break it down further, 1 every 3 hours. Now, more than just statistics, we have to remember that this is 3,027 mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, they're all loved ones. It's also been established that for every suicide, at least 100 people are affected. 10 of those are profoundly affected, they're bereaved. So if we do the maths on that, we're looking at 300,000 Australians every year affected by suicide, 3 million over 10 years. Now, 3,027 compared to an average annual road toll of 1,400. And I don't mean to downplay the problem that is our road toll, but just to give you some comparison. On the 22nd of November 2006, our son Glenn took the decision to end his own life. This was almost 2 months after his 18th birthday. Glenn was to us a very special man. He was bright, bubbly, cheerful, happy, kind and caring in particular. In fact, cheeky, mischievous larrikin is how some people would have described him, and I certainly did from time to time. He had no interest in academic endeavour, but was an outstanding athlete and sportsman. In Year 11 in his school, he represented that school in 7 different sports at open and up to state level, while also being heavily involved in surf club contests and longboard surfing contests. Around the time of his 18th birthday, he was convinced by, we'll call them others, to move away from the Sunshine Coast and his beloved surf. It was just 6 weeks later that we received a visit from 2 of the local police, a visit that I came to learn more people than I previously knew had. In the days and weeks following this news, it felt like a thick fog had descended on us. I had to find the strength to function somewhere near normally from time to time, because there were decisions that had to be made and actions to be taken. The rest of the time felt like living in a washing machine, jumping from anger to sadness, guilt to blame. Then you get the if onlys and is this real stood out. In spite of the statistics, suicide has not been regularly and openly discussed. It's been a taboo subject, and it quickly became apparent to me that there was a stigma and ignorance attached to it. This stigma first stood out to me when the first direct member of my family came to our house that evening, and the first thing they said to Megan and I was, "This is no good, is it? But we will get it cleaned up quickly and quietly, won't we?" I think you can probably imagine another dose of shock and dismay just hours after having learned of the death of our son. Stigma was further highlighted to me through the regular use of the phrase committed suicide when referring to Glenn's passing. To me, this implies an offence or criminal action and in no way reflects suicide as being a person's decision in what must have been a very dark time. Suicide is the leading cause of deaths in Australian males between 15 and 44. To help reduce the number of people taking their lives, we need to smash the taboo, peel back the stigma and learn how to support one another. The first and possibly most important thing we can do is to remove the stigma, is to change the language that we use when talking about suicide. Today I'm asking you to help me remove the stigma by not using the phrases committed suicide, completed suicide, or successful suicide, and instead died by suicide, suicided, took his own life or took her own life, ended her own life. And if we can change to this, we'll not only be making it easier for those of us that have been affected, but also help to get this tragic subject talked about more openly and regularly. A recent survey conducted by a Beyond Blue committee that I'm a member of revealed that the majority of Australians that were spoken to are well aware of suicide and many of them the extent of the problem. It was also interesting to me that their response when asked how they thought things might change was that it was very much a matter for governments and organisations like Beyond Blue. They didn't see it as something that they should be involved in. I believe a major part of our problem is that we as Australians have lost our sense of community. We no longer look out for and after each other. And this is something we need to change, and you're an important part of that change. To help you become leaders in bringing about this change, I'd like you to consider what some of the early warning signs that somebody may be struggling might be, and how you might be able to support them. Warning signs might be comments, behaviours, situations, experiences, or a combination of any of those. You might hear subtle comments like, "You would be better off without me," "My family would be better off without me," "I'm tired of life," "I just want out," or "Soon I won't be around." It's been good, but we must all say goodbye at some time. Through to "Here, take this watch, ball, favourite thing, whatever it might be, I won't be needing it." Or even, how do they preserve your kidneys or another organ for transplant if you die suddenly? Clues can also be found in changed behaviour. These includes unexplained episodes of anger, aggression or irritability, self-harm, risky and reckless behaviour, gathering or stockpiling medication including tablets, getting their personal affairs in order including, more so with adults, buying additional life insurance, and giving away their personal possessions. And particularly moving suddenly from a state of depression and despair to being very happy, and this happening very quickly. This is often a decision, an indication that their decision has been made. So we need to really look out for that one. We also need to be aware of changes in circumstance. Things like a relationship breakdown, a recent unwanted move, the death of a loved one, being fired from their job, expelled from school, or diagnosis of a serious or terminal illness can all be signs that we need to be wary of. Next, we need to consider how we might plan the conversation that we're looking to have to maximise the chances of a positive outcome. Ideally, we need to establish a time and place that will provide privacy and will limit the chance of us being interrupted. We also need to allow plenty of time because people who are considering or have been thinking about suicide have a real need to talk once that situation has been uncovered or declared by another person. Then we need to think about possible questions that we might ask. You might choose to start with the good old "Are you okay?" My suggestion is that that's been marketed and used so extensively that it's a lot easier for us to deflect that. So I would suggest that perhaps you might just start off with something simple like, "How are you?" You might say, "You all right? You don't seem yourself lately." Is everything okay at home, school, work, wherever you think their problem may have been? And or perhaps you could just say, "Hey, my week sucked. How's yours been?" You never know what you might hear. You can always follow these with a "I've noticed" sign to follow up on it. "I've noticed that you're a bit flat or tired. You're not coming and out and doing much lately. And in particular, you've been doing some really scary things lately." Just be careful to be specific with this comment and not to be judgmental. You may also, given the circumstance, find it necessary to ask the more direct question, "Are you thinking about suicide?" Extremely hard question to ask, but we need to learn how to ask it. It's really important. Do not ask closed questions. Questions like, you wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? You're not thinking of killing yourself, are you? Suicide is a dumb idea, surely you're not thinking about suicide. Don't use those. They're in fact, I don't really want to know questions and are quite dangerous. Once you've asked the question, you need to be patient. Remember, silence is okay, and don't push by asking 1,000 questions. Don't interrupt, just listen. Let them know that you really care and be sure that you don't rush to judgment. While listening, we need to identify the problems that they believe will be solved by them taking their own life. We need to ask some questions to uncover that and to be sure of it so that we know that we can help them get the appropriate help. So there are a number of options depending on the depth of your friend's problem. All you may need to do is nothing and just be there for them at this time and to listen. Asking a simple question like, what can I do to help you, may be sufficient, or you could try, I have no idea what to do, but let's figure this out together. If you have a deeper concern, you should look for a commitment from them to get help immediately by asking them, will you come with me to see a school counsellor, doctor, Headspace, or talk to Lifeline if you need to? Or would you like me to make an appointment for you to go and do one of those things? At this point, you could also seek a commitment from them. I want to help you live. Can you promise me that you will stay alive until we get you some help? You also need to be careful of, if you hear the direct statements, I wish I were dead, or I'm going to end it all. Very direct things. Only thing to do there, call 000. Ambulance and police officers are highly trained and have the authority to take care of this type of situation. In the meantime, you've got to try and remove any means to suicide from their reach, and be sure to stay with them. Don't leave them alone. Talking about suicide is difficult for many people, but it can be life-saving. Our reluctance or inability to talk openly about suicide is, I believe, a direct result of the taboo, stigma and ignorance that surrounds it. We need to talk more openly and honestly about suicide if we want to see a change in the suicide rates. Hopefully after today you'll seem more confident to talk about suicide and will join me in becoming the change agents that we so desperately need. And I'll just leave a slide up there because I'm out of time around self-care. The other critical thing is that we be aware of our own emotions and thoughts at the time when we're helping somebody else. And I've put some coping strategies up there if you start to feel it affecting you. Thanks.